So many Christians adore Charlie Kirk. Well, I think it's the same reason why the other half of the population didn't like him. And that reason is our social media algorithm. You see, if you're white, straight, and Christian, the algorithm mostly pushes videos of him being kind, loving, talking about Jesus, and encouraging family values and their political viewpoints. I've seen those videos, and he sounds amazing in them. There's plenty of videos out there showing him being loving and kind and even accepting of the LGBTQ community. However, if you're not a white, straight Christian fundamentalist, then those videos aren't pushed to your algorithm. The videos they saw of him were videos of him saying that immigration is invasion, meaning that all immigrants are our enemy trying to invade and they're dangerous. They saw the videos of him constantly telling women that they have to submit to men, which dehumanizes women and puts them below men. So that rhetoric that women are not equal to men makes people angry. They see the videos of him saying that empathy is harmful. And I know that he went on to talk about having sympathy, but sympathy is not enough. We should have empathy with boundaries. That's the healthiest way to live. There's also the videos of him saying that all transgender people have mental illnesses. And he pushed for policy that would not allow them to be recognized. That's also dehumanizing. Then, of course, he questioned whether or not Black pilots were truly qualified and Black women were able to process their thoughts. And these were not just bad days. These were repetitive narrative that he never apologized for. So half of the country is mourning him as a hero of their faith because that's all they saw. And they believed like him, so they liked him. Whereas the other half of the country who didn't believe like him or look like him remember him constantly dehumanizing their very existence. But when you have a platform that reaches millions of people, you have a huge responsibility. Because words that frame entire groups as invaders, inferior, or mentally ill, that's not just sharing an opinion. That's like shaping culture, which makes discrimination and violence more likely. And multiple things can be true at the same time. We can say that he was a man of faith that loved his family and was brave and courageous to share his thoughts. And we can say that political violence and assassination is absolutely wrong. People should have free speech. And you can also acknowledge that his rhetoric was hateful and dangerous. But let's be clear that he did not die for his faith. If that was the case, then the assassin would have had a bomb and killed everybody there. Because almost every single person in his life had faith, including all of his family. I think it's important to see what the other side saw so that we can have a little more grace for one another right now. Because Lord knows that's exactly what our country needs right now. Grace and a new administration.
But that's just my opinion. So let me explain why it's not. The fact that millions of us were forced to watch a violent political assassination across every major social media platform last week was an intentional choice by these platforms, and they have a reason that they wanted you to see it. I work in politics, and I've spent years trying to regulate big tech companies with a special focus on content moderation. So let me explain to you exactly how I know that they wanted you to see this. First, we have to go back to 2019, after the Christchurch massacre was live streamed on Facebook. People were rightfully horrified to see that kind of violence on their Facebook feed, and so the campaign for the GIFCT was born, known as the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism. This was a PR nightmare for these social media companies, so the pressure campaign worked, and they all signed on to be members of the GIFCT. One agreement to be part of the GIFCT is that they all have to share data on videos and images that have been labeled to be violent or to violate community guidelines. So if a violent video gets flagged on Twitter, it should automatically get flagged and taken down from Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, etc. This has been the case since 2019, and overall, people have been seeing far fewer violent videos across their general timelines. It's also key to note that when a video is flagged on the GIFCT database, it's supposed to come down off these other platforms automatically. So if it doesn't, someone had to intervene. The graphic video of Charlie Kirk getting assassinated meets all of the classifications for something that would be in the GIFCT database and thus should have automatically come down off of all of these platforms. The fact that the video is still being widely circulated tells us that these tech companies wanted you to see it. That poses another big question, which is why. I have a theory, which is that all of these big tech companies are mostly run by unaccountable right-wing billionaires who only stand to benefit from stoking the flames of division in this country. Studies show that people engage with social media more when they're fighting and when they're angry, and politics is a really great way to get people riled up and engaged so that you can keep them on the platform, serve them advertisements, and keep making money. But we also know that these big tech billionaires are colluding with Donald Trump, and he has a concerted interest in everybody seeing this video, being horrified, and being able to use it as pretext to go after his political enemies, even if they had nothing to do with the assassination. While some may accuse me of being conspiratorial, anyone who thinks we weren't seeing this for a reason
to be very clear that if you do not have children before the age of 30, there's only a 50% chance that you will have children.
That's a fact.
It's a fact.
Here's what actually is a fact. Charlie Kirk's wife Erica gave birth to both his children well into her mid-30s. Let me guess, you're the exception to the made-up rule.
The most depressed people in America are women without children.
Source? Trust me, bro.
Young single women in their early 30s without children.
Well, if that's the case, then women should just pursue having children on their own to relieve this depression. But that's not what you mean, is it?
I think that we've gone wrong here, that women should prioritize family and children way above career.
Men like Charlie Kirk need to realize they are one of the many reasons why women may pursue career over a family.
That they should try to find their husband before they're 25.
Back to Charlie Kirk's wife, who's 5 years older than him, and they got married when she was in her early 30s. This man's lived experience doesn't align with any of the arguments that he's making.
We're having less children than ever before. It's a major problem.
Actually, it's a certain demographic of people that are having fewer children that you see as a major
25-year-olds. Get married young and have more kids than you can afford. I've never met anyone who wishes they'd had fewer kids, but I've met a lot of people who regret waiting so long or having so few. Every 60-plus-year-old that I know cares about one thing above all else: their kids and grandkids. Before we get into the why, I just want to be totally clear here. This is god-awful advice. This is, in fact, a recipe for pure misery. Let's talk about why. Right off the bat, suggesting to young parents that they should have more kids than they can afford is an awful idea, because financial distress and a lack of support are the biggest causes of parental burnout. Parental burnout being one of the 2 factors most likely to lead a parent to regret becoming a parent in the first place. Or in other words, encouraging people to have more kids than they can afford is likely to lead them to regret having any kids at all. The other major factor, by the way, in leading people to regret having had kids is having had no choice in the matter. If you have children when you don't want them due to social, cultural, or legal pressure, there's a very good chance that you won't change your mind after they show up. Survey data has shown pretty consistently now that somewhere between 5 and 15% parents would not have kids if they had the chance to do it all over again. However, owing to the fact that it is so taboo and there's so much shame associated with admitting that you experience parental regret, it's not clear that we can actually trust that data, and the numbers might actually be higher. What about the regret then of the people who waited too long to have children? So this isn't the sort of question typically asked in scholarship. Data sources are a little questionable, but it does appear that something like 20% of women who have babies after they turn 30 wish they had had them earlier. What has been studied though, and what I think is really important here, is to ask why they wait. Because the answer is, and this should sound very familiar, that they needed financial stability and support. Would have loved to have babies earlier if they had those 2 things in place. And just to get the fullest possible picture, I think we should talk a little bit about the people who don't have kids at all. About 50% of all childless Americans wish that they had had children. But it is super important that we carve out a special space here for people who are child-free. If you are childless by choice today, it is exceedingly unlikely that you will regret your decision in the future. And the regret rate for child-free individuals is less than half that of people who did have children. I think the actual takeaway here for the rest of us is that if you plan on sharing advice on the internet that is for anyone and everyone, maybe you should base it on something more than your own.
You guys discuss religion, finances, politics, how to raise children before getting engaged. If I could just chime in on one of them. Men, you should be completely in charge of finances.
I totally agree.
And your wife should have nothing to do with it. I mean, they can have input, but you should release that burden from your wife and just take care of all the money.
Erica and Charlie Kirk recorded that 5 months ago. Now, she's a multimillionaire with a doctorate degree and is now a CEO. She financially is going to be fine. But if she was an average person who is living the kind of life that she and her husband actively encourage young women to live, meaning getting married and having children extremely young and not having any involvement in finances, and she were to have lost her husband, she would be in an incredibly dangerous, vulnerable situation. Not being involved in your personal finances and having a really solid understanding of personal finances in general leaves you incredibly vulnerable to financial abuse. Obviously, all women need to have an active understanding of personal finances and be involved in their own personal finances, but especially if you have children. If something like the unthinkable happens to you, like it did to Erica Kirk, if you do not know where your money is and how to actively manage your money, you and your family will be in a really dire spot, and when you're already
basically told a great generation of young women, don't get married, don't have kids, go get a corporate job, and it's created mass political hysteria. And then in their early 30s, they get really upset because they say, the boys don't want to date me anymore because they're not at their prime. And people get mad when I say that. Well, it's just true. If you're in your early 30s, I'm sorry. It's like you're not as attractive in the dating pool as you were in the early 20s. But again, you have your corporate job and cats. So I thought,
He married his wife when she's 31 and older than him. He preached this message of women staying home and they should not focus on their education. And she's got several degrees.
And she was a millionaire before she met him.
Right. Was self-sustaining with all the talk he gave about, and I don't, to be clear, I don't have an issue with the fact that she had degrees and was self-sustaining and, but
it's the hypocrisy.
Talking about modesty and not presenting your physical appearance. And she's literally a pageant queen, and you've got layers of this ultimately to the point where it's like, okay, now she's the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company as a mother with children, which again, great for her, but the whole company is built on the antithesis of who she is now.
Yep.
And so I think
and telling women, you don't need to go to school. You need to get married younger and have babies as soon as you can.
deep down, the ladies, even in this room that play the girl boss thing on Instagram, deep down, you're begging for a man to lead you.
National Sexual Violence Resource Center, apparently about 1 in 5 women experiences
This is
rape.
complete garbage. Just so
It is not.
Want me to prove it to you?
How is it not?
If you guys, if 1 in 5 women experience sexual assault or rape,
Yes.
then we would have the same levels of rape as the Congo. Okay? I want you to
Is that
understand-
not possible? Like,
No, it's not just impossible. It's like pathologically insane to believe that 1 in 5 women, that we have third world levels of violence,
so
sexual
shouldn't we be
violence and
doing
rape.
something about that then?
No,
Like,
meaning that the report.
I fail to see
no,
how
meaning
you're
that- no,
you're discrediting something
what-
instead of just acknowledging that it could genuinely be true. Like, two things can be true
it's,
at once.
It's not even close to being, just so we're clear, it's that it's like 1 in 5,000. It's not 1 in 5. Okay? No, the idea that 1 in 5 women are raped or sexually assaulted in this country has been so disproven. In fact, they
Says
say, well,
who?
let me prove it to you.
Because we have
lots
of stats.
Let
This is actually on the lower end. I've heard
Okay.
higher stats.
They
This is
say,
on the lower end.
Let me prove it to you. If they say college campuses are rape culture because 1 in 4, 1 or 5 women get raped. If that's the case, why would women ever go to college campuses? Why would
Because
parents?
they want an education?
No, hold on. It's more dangerous than going into the Democratic Republic of Congo. I mean, the point is that it's so materially insane to think that 1 in 5 American women will be raped in their life.
It is. I agree.
No, meaning that they're lying about being raped, that they're lying about being sexually
You
assaulted.
believe that people lie about being See,
all
this
the
is actually
time.
this feeds into what I was
All the
saying.
time.
This feeds into what I was
Brett
saying.
Kavanaugh
actually.
had 11 fake accusers. One guy, 11 fake accusers.
This feeds into what I was
Again,
saying. Do you know why a lot of people probably don't report their sexual assaults and rapes?
Well, because there's a lot
they're
in the
not
gray.
believed.
There's a lot in the gray area. Alcohol's involved. It was consensual, and then it wasn't consensual. The girl
Consent
was.
can be removed at any time.
Okay. Again, now we're getting into murky gray area stuff, right? Where if you have two, like a fraternity guy and a sorority girl at age 19 hooking up, both 5 drinks in at 2 a.m., and all of a sudden she like removes consent. Yeah, like that's a murky middle gray area. And excuse me when
She
I say.
still removed consent, did she not?
Okay, but again,
if he continues to go onward with that encounter,
Again,
then he is sexually assaulting her.
Again, that is such an unfair
Obviously
categorization.
about
Like,
trying to destroy the excellence of the country and elevate racial tribal politics.
Okay, so if you don't have the racism, right, And then you'll need that program. So you eradicate the racism, and that eliminates the need for any kind of program.
No, but if you have excellence, you're going to find the
that
best.
tries to take people and put them in place because they're minorities.
You want the best in everything. So let me just ask a final question, okay? If you were about to board a United Airlines flight from Tallahassee to Atlanta, and you find out the airline pilot says, "Hey everybody, I'm a pilot. I was hired because of diversity. Let's have a great flight." Would that make you feel good or not so good?
No, but I know he's still got to be qualified in order to fly that aircraft.
But he said, "I was hired because of diversity," and you're like,
you still got to meet the standards in order to get into the cockpit.
Well,
so in all of this, all of these perspectives, what's happening here, believe it or not, is a phenomenon called centering whiteness. And when we talk about centering whiteness, it means that when we look at Middle Eastern identity, we are looking at Middle Eastern identity and what it means relative to whiteness, what it means to be Asian relative to whiteness, what it means to be black, and the significance of blackness, the racial interpretations therein relative to the white perspective. And in essence, what we are doing kind of falls perfectly in line with what I've been describing to you about hegemonic culture here, is that at the core of the hegemon is the centering of the white perspectives, the centering of white experiences, the centering of white norms as the default standard from which we evaluate all others. So whiteness in this regard is then rendered the credible one. The white experience, the white perspective, the white notions are considered to be the credible one, the valuable one, the standard one, the normal one, from which all deviant perspectives therein are a little bit different. It creates a kind of Eurocentric view of the world. And in this Eurocentric view, somehow Europeans or people who are descendant from those of Europe don't really have a stereotype that you can point to. You notice that? There isn't a white stereotype necessarily, in the same ways that there are Black, Asian, Middle Eastern, etc. So on that front then, whiteness is centered rhetorically, philosophically, but then also
If you ever
literally.
need an example of how to look extremely ignorant, look no further than comedian Chrissy Mayer in her tweet about DEI. I'm on my way to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I see the pilot in the cockpit. If I don't make it, blame DEI. Turns out Chrissy isn't just unfunny. She's also not very relevant because it looks like Boarding Group 7 was bigger than her Fort Wayne show. You know, the one that the so-called DEI hire pilot flew you to. So whether you're just a terrible comedian or actually a racist, allow me to clear up a few things about DEI and aviation. And just for context, I'm a libertarian who leans conservative, so there's no dunking on the libs here. Fact, airline pilot standards haven't been lowered. They were actually raised in 2013. And since that gentleman is flying a commercial jet, I already know without question that he meets these minimum requirements. Fact, no one passes airline training unless they're proficient. Airlines can hire whoever they want, assuming they have all those qualifications I just mentioned, but they still have to go through 2 months of systems trainings, sim checks, and evaluation by experienced check airmen. When I trained students, I knew that one day they would be flying me or my family. I never signed off somebody who wasn't ready, and no one ever pressured me to do so otherwise. I could keep going, but I only have 90 seconds. And if you want a deeper dive on this topic, you can check out my YouTube channel, Gary B. Pilot. But I'll leave you with this. This is my buddy Herman. We've known each other for almost 20 years and we're both airline pilots. We came up through the same flight school, took the same check rides, earned our place in the cockpit through merit, sweat, and sacrifice. So for someone to assume it wasn't earned with a lazy, racist assumption, it's not comedy. That's just ignorance.
A lot of people are going to be saying Happy Juneteenth. It should not be a federal holiday and I'm on my way to work. Have a good day.
There are different types of microaggression. There's micro assaults. Those can be like explicit but subtle actions.
Larger than that, Charlie.
I live like a capitalist every single day, Shank. I live as a
capitalist,
okay? I live when I believe.
Those micro insults.
About 2/3 of all black youth will be raised without a stable father around. And I know it's crazy, right?
Micro invalidations.
Say what? Say the what?
The N-word. I'm not going to say it on this public platform, but people say it to me all the time.
It derogatorily.
Yes.
No, I think you're lying.
Dismissals of the other, and it often negates the experiences.
Racist when he said that he'd be worried about a black pilot. When you look at the context, the United States was mandating that we go from 15% black pilots to 50%. You know, I think a misconception that people of color can have about white people is that none of them care about looking racist or sounding racist. And after going to college with a bunch of white kids, I actually don't think that's true. I think a lot of them don't want to be seen as racist. So instead of calling you racist, I'm going to explain to you why a black person might read this sentence and think that it's racist. Because if I just call you racist, you're just going to tune out of this video, which doesn't do me any good, right? Then I'm just talking to myself. I don't want you to tune out of the video. I want you to understand. So you said the context makes it not racist, and that context was that the United States was mandating that we have to go from 15% black pilots to 50% black pilots. That wasn't even the context. But this isn't a gotcha. I want to engage with you as if that was the context. So let's say that that's what the FAA said had to happen. 50% of the pilots need to be black. Even in that world, the FAA said nothing about lowering their training and performance standards to being a pilot. 1,500 hours of flight time, ATP certification training programs, passing exams on meteorology, systems, regulations, aerodynamics, 2020 or 2020 correctable vision, cardiovascular, having ECGs taken annually, having no history of heart disease. You see how your brain jumped to, in order to increase the number of black pilots, they must decrease their qualification standards without learning anything about the qualification standards, without even hearing anything about the qualification standards changing. Yeah, that's racist. Like, you did enough research to be frightened and to land on a racially charged opinion, but not enough research to learn that wasn't even the context. The context was just that the United Airlines had a goal to train 5,000 pilots, just train, not even to hire. And that they wanted half of them to be either women or black. And for them to pass the training program, hold up, you're gonna love this. They had to pass all the same regulations. And here's the difference between you and Charlie Kirk. You work a regular job, so you don't have time to know about all the intricacies of the FAA or any of this. But Charlie Kirk did. Charlie Kirk knew everything I just said, and he pushed a narrative anyway, because Charlie Kirk had a goal. And his goal was to have you running around carrying all of his racially charged opinions so that you don't check the status quo and you just blame your black and brown brothers for the problems that you have. And you accepted his worldview about black people without asking any further questions. And that feels racist.
Still looking for context? Here you go.
Writer accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, "Black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously." But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words.
If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
Oh my God, you're right. He didn't say all black women. It's totally fine that he talked about 4 Ivy League graduates that have incredible careers, that they don't have the brain processing power to be taken seriously, so they took a white person's spot. That makes it okay. Also, I don't think any of you that are trying to justify this even actually know what affirmative action is.
14% of the population,
Yes,
about half of all prisoners are black.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crimes than whites do. They commit more murders, they commit more arsons, they commit more kidnappings. For example, blacks are 13% of the population and they commit 58% of all the murders.
Okay, let's talk about it. These are obviously racist claims, but I will respond to them as if Charlie Kirk were a reasonable person.
Black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population.
Yes,
about half of all prisoners are black.
Wrong. Just 38% of America's prison population is black. That's according to the U.S. government. But it makes you wonder why Charlie feels the need to add an additional 12% to the black prison population. Could it be because his bigoted talking points only work if he exaggerates them? If Charlie were actually looking for the race that makes up half the prison population in the U.S., he'd look no further than white people at 57%.
Exactly. So blacks commit more crimes than whites do.
Wrong. The word "so" is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
So blacks commit more crimes.
He's saying "so" as in therefore, as in one could conclude, but Charlie knows he's lying. Even if he hadn't just lied about the black prison population, Charlie is smart enough to know that correlation does not equal causation, but he's hoping that you don't know that. So he deploys the word "so" to make you think he's coming to an obvious conclusion.
So blacks
Instead, he's making an illogical racist leap. Charlie knows that we don't have usable data about who commits crimes. It's impossible to have that data since so many crimes go both unreported and or unsolved. Charlie knows that we only have data about arrests and convictions. I'll come back to that data in a moment. What's painfully obvious is that Charlie Kirk isn't interested in understanding the statistics he so carelessly misquotes. He's interested in making bad faith arguments, something that becomes even more obvious in his next point.
Blacks are 13% of the population and they commit 58% of all the murders.
Wrong again. And loud this time. If Charlie were interested in honesty, he would have mentioned the other 1350 statistic. Yes, black people are about 13% of the population, but make up 53% of all criminal exonerations. In fact, black people make up 55% of all murder exonerations. Specifically, black people are more likely than any other group in this country to be convicted of crimes they did not commit. And then people like you have the nerve to parade these stats around as though they prove something. The reality is that you probably know these stats, but you leave them out on purpose, because to bring that stat into this conversation would make some people think. And that's the last
memorial
thing.
service was bizarre. Unless, of course, you're acquainted with the liturgy and theology of Christian nationalism.
My friends, we have had a revival in celebration of Charlie Kirk and of his Lord Jesus Christ.
It was evident that in Kirk, this very powerful movement had found its martyr, its hero, and they weren't going to waste their chance to tell the world what they were all about. The memorial service began with several hours of worship music, the biggest names in CCM on one stage there in Kirk's honor.
Come on, can we just lift our hands all across this place?
And then the speeches started. It was essentially a who's who of Trump loyalists.
Christianity, we are on the side of God.
At one point, one of Kirk's colleagues likened it to a Trump rally.
Charlie's having some serious heavenly FOMO right now. He always said to me, if we can just figure out how to bring the Holy Spirit into a Trump rally.
Kirk's pastor delivered a sermon and an appeal for people to accept Jesus as their personal savior.
If there's any in this room and across the globe that would desire to receive Jesus as their savior, as Charlie did as a young man, I ask you to stand right now to receive the Lord.
But it was followed by a call to stand for the national anthem. Christian nationalists have made it their hallmark to mix the sacred and the secular, where praise and partisanship are strange bedfellows. This was a feature of almost every speech, but two stood out to me specifically. One was Benny Johnson's speech, where he claimed that God ordained Trump to wield a sword against evil men in our own nation.
May we pray that our rulers here, rightfully instituted and given power by our God, wield the sword for the terror of evil men in our nation in Charlie's memory.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent.
And the second came from a man frequently criticized for using white supremacist talking points, Jack Posobiec. Jack predicted how Western civilization will be saved.
That a century from now, when they write of the 2 or 3 pivotal moments that led to the saving of Western civilization, they will write that the sacrifice of Charles James Kirk was the turning point.
Kirk's memorial service put on full display the Christian nationalist vision of the world, one that is consumed by the belief that Christians are at war, a culture war of good versus evil playing out on the political stage specifically. In the mind of the Christian nationalists, they are the good ones, the real Christians, and they reiterated time and time again their belief that they have the mandate of heaven, God's calling, to defeat anyone who dares stand.
Kirk's interview with Jesse Waters, where I thought, did she listen to Charlie's podcasts at all?
I don't know why you would waste your time saying somebody deserves to be publicly executed.
You know what? I want to watch that execution. That'll make my day better.
In front of everyone.
By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many
Too
appeals.
expensive.
It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised.
Why would you say that? Do you think it's funny?
You could have brought to you by Coca-Cola. No, I'm not kidding. By the way, I would totally tune in to see some pedo get their head chopped off.
I understand wanting justice to be served, but really, that's the way to go. Then there's that whole pro-life thing. And Jesus saves, right? So what if they're in prison and they come to Christ and then all's forgiven, right?
I just ask them to really reassess.
Say today we're going to publicly execute this person, and
About
they read
the
off
Super Bowl.
No,
The guy says it should be an event like the Super Bowl, and Charlie's down with that.
the Super Bowl thing, and you read off what they did,
Great.
and you get a
You only
last
do it-
meal. No, they should
And
make
it's not
you
even
eat
that.
bran.
It's not.
Look how excited they are about this idea.
If they get a high off of watching someone be murdered.
And if you do this, this will be your fate. Ready, set, go. Boom. End of life.
We're not talking about whether that person is guilty or not, whether they deserved to die or not. It is about ending a life. If one person or institution ends somebody else's life, it's not that complicated.
saying don't make kids watch it, and I think no, the absolute
I think
opposite.
at a certain age, it's an initiation.
I thought there was a certain age that young people should have to watch public executions, like an initiation.
Why is this even
more
a
episodes a week now? So just tell the team and.
I could see how people could find this confusing. This was just a few days after his emotional funeral service. I've helped clients through their grief process over the last 25 years, and I've never seen anything like this before. There is a deep gravitational pull when there's loss and grief, especially of your great love and the parent of your children. Just days later, she's belly laughing and thrilled to take over his podcast. And he told women to go to college to get their MRS degrees, saying that stay-home moms were heroes and there should be more of them. But as a community college dropout, he married a woman with multiple degrees. At the time he died, she was running her own clothing business and doing public speaking. She was working on other projects. She was doing real estate. And now she's taken over as Turning Point CEO. And they have little children. Sounds like the opposite of a stay-at-home mom. And he talked so much about family values. Yet, none of his family were seen or heard from at his own funeral service, or even her family. How does that work? Things aren't always what they
This
seem.
is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many
Too
appeals.
expensive.
It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised.
Honestly, that's like what we should be doing, and I agree. It should be public
And
should be
televised.
public square.
By the way, you could sell. You could
Force
fund the
kids
government
to watch it.
You could have like brought to you by Coca-Cola. And no, I'm not kidding. By the way, I would totally tune in to see someone get their head chopped off. And you know what? I want to watch that execution. That'll make my day better. I want to see him on a public block and get him be publicly executed. And I think that would be justice. You think children should have...
Andrew's saying don't make kids watch it, and I think no, the
Well, I
absolute
think at a
opposite.
certain age, it's an initiation.
16, if you can drive, you can
no,
watch
but hold
it.
on. You should see it. What is the age? At what age should you start to see public executions?
16.
I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12,
Whenever-
like 6th grade or so. You are a person, you know.
Then why are you bringing up religion as a relevant point to how you vote in terms of abortion? Can you name one other thing outside of the context of abortion that Donald Trump supports that is Christian-like?
I think protecting borders is a Christian value.
Really? Did Jesus talk about that in the Bible, or did he specifically say to treat foreigners like the people who are native born to your country?
Okay, yeah, I agree that he would accept
So
it.
he would actually disagree with Donald Trump's position on borders. So let's be very clear. What specifically is Christian-like in terms of Donald Trump outside of the context of his position on abortion?
I cannot think of something else.
has moved from the fringes directly into the halls of government itself. The New York Times dropped this explosive new report calling out by name members of the Trump administration who expressed opinions that would probably get most people fired, like Darren Beattie, who previously wrote on social media, quote, "Competent white men must be in charge. Unfortunately, our national ideology is predicated on coddling the feelings of women and minorities and demoralizing competent white men." He's now a State Department employee and head of the U.S. Institute for Peace. And Paul Ingracia, who has posted on social media, quote, "Exceptional white men are not only the builders of Western civilization, but are the ones most capable of appreciating the fruits of our heritage." He is now Trump's pick to lead the office of special counsel. And Kingsley Wilson, who said, quote, "The great replacement theory isn't a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's reality." She's now the Pentagon press
Girl in
secretary.
10 years, would you still vote for him?
If he said what?
He would date a 10-year-old girl in 10 years. If you went up to a 10-year-old girl and he said he was going to be dating her in 10 years, would you still support him?
Oh, dude. And did he actually say that?
I'm just asking in the condition that that's true. Would you support him?
Well, stop. If you're asking me that right now, did he actually say that, and what's the source? Because that's disgusting.
in the condition of him saying that, would you support him?
Oh man, look at you, dude. If he truly, you know what? No, I wouldn't. But I support I support the policies. But I'd like to see. No, I wouldn't support if I saw that.
He's getting the footage for you.
Yeah,
oh, God.
listen.
Thursday night. You going up the escalator? I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it?
Woo. Oh, that's a tough one.
And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like $30,000 or $40,000. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions. And what does she say there? She says they destroyed our religion, our language, our culture. Be curious to hear her thoughts on why she thinks that worldview is good. She thinks that African tribalism is morally better than Western human equality. Now, is that her argument? Does she believe that African tribalism and the mysticism that would basically be the predominant metaphysical view of tribes in sub-Saharan Africa at the time was more morally advanced or better than what we consider to be Western society, that has the rule of law, due process, human equality, freedom of speech, private property rights? I mean, it's not even close. And so, yes, I will say, talking about something even crazier. Allegedly, Haitians are going around and taking people's pets and eating them. The duck pond in a local park is being picked clean. So allegedly, you have Haitians in this. The world actually became more civil. Well, certain cultures are better than others. Saying that out loud is a thought crime.
Absolutely. I was thinking about the word democracy and how it comes from demos, which means the people.
Yes,
and it's basically.
I hate the word democracy.
Yeah, it allows the mob to make decisions for the whole.
I'm not a fan of democracy.
It's pretty brute.
But I can say declaratively, this guy is not worthy of a national holiday. He is not worthy of godlike status. In fact, you can't. Here's what's upsetting to me, Heather, is if I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? It almost creates thought patterns that are not necessarily wholesome. It creates resentment, doesn't it, Heather? This is not a way to design society. Joe Biden. A lot. I mean, Joe Biden is a bumbling, dementia-filled, Alzheimer's, corrupt tyrant who should honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
Shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Maybe they were afraid. I mean, 4,000 black men, women, and children were killed in violent lynch mobs.
That's your explanation, but I guess
racial terror permeated American culture for hundreds of years.
Black America is worse than it has been
that affected
in the last 80 years.
The generational psyche of an entire group of people?
Well, I'm sure it did. I'm not discounting that. I'm just shows
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color, but I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
I hear because of action affirmative. She can't even say that. We know. It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own. I couldn't make it on my own, so I needed to make church and state. It's a fabrication. It's a fiction. It's not in the Constitution. It's made up by secular humanists. It's derived from a single letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist Convention. Of course, we should have church and state mixed together.
First day of Black History Month. And I think we should talk about that, because I don't think there should be a Black History Month. I don't like entire months dedicated to a race.
To have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year. So that we think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year. So that younger men, I do think that there is a direct correlation between someone's testosterone and their politics. I would love to have a study done on this.
Until this point, that's not a great role model for young women, to wait all the way until you're 35 and just put your career first. We just talked about this with Katie Miller. However, there's a great chance to change. Submit to your husband, Taylor. You're not in charge. And most importantly, I can't wait to go to a Taylor Kelsey concert. I can't say it without laughing. You got to change your name. If not, you don't really mean it. Congratulations. This is going to sound incredibly sexist. I don't care. If it is a woman that you want to get married to and she says that she wants to be a traditional wife, see if she's actually up to it. Say, okay, treat me, cook me a meal.
Let me also speak to some of the young ladies here in high school where your top, who's here where your top priority is get married and have kids? Raise your hand. Okay. Interestingly, I think there is an argument to bring back the MRS degree. And no, seriously. And just be clear, that's why you're going to college, right? Don't lie to yourself, I'm studying sociology. No, you're not. We know why you're here. And that's okay, actually. Yes, if they're so again, no means no, and stop means stop. But you would both agree, if two parties are intoxicated, there's gray area, right?
No, I don't.
Actually, yes, the law says that consent cannot be given or withdrawn if both parties or either party is intoxicated. That's the law. The law here in California is that if one party is intoxicated, it is rape by either the woman or the man. That's gray area.
The fact that 1 in 5,000 women is not even remotely close to true.
Okay, so what number would you say? What would you say the number is?
To say 1 in 5.
So 1 in 5 means that about 40 million women have been raped in this country. Is that your position?
Yes.
I just find it's like so far out of reality that 40 million women have been raped.
I know that it's a little bit of a hard concept to grasp for people like you, but I fear that you just don't know enough women who are in positions like that. I don't really want to debate this topic to you, but
I will die on the hill that 40 million American women have not been raped. I'm sorry, that's insane. It's just not true. You want to know why men are going to the right? They're told that 1 in 5 women have encounters that result in. We as men know that's a bunch of rubbish and a bunch of BS.
Use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. I can do anything.
Impulses. A lot of them are on birth control too, and birth control really screws up female brains, by the way. Every single one of you need to make sure that your loved ones are not on birth control.
Honest about it is the young women are more liberal than ever because liberalism is rooted in complaining and young girls love to complain. So obviously it's built for them. Young